I don't know what it is about recording, but for some reason, when I get in front of a mic, it just throws me off. And I don't even have a real mic. I have a freaking phone as a mic. But anyways, let's get to the review. Today I'm going to be reviewing The Joker, or just Joker, as it's appropriately called. And one thing I got to say is right off the bat, I love this movie. I enjoyed it from beginning to end. You know, it started off a little bit slow. Not that I didn't enjoy it, but it definitely was a little bit slow. But then the build-up kept me definitely interesting. And then by halfway through the movie, I was glued to my seat. My eyes were glued to the screen, and I was just trying to figure out what was going to happen next. All right, let's start with this review. Spoiler warnings. I will be spoiling certain aspects of the movie. Sequential warning, I will not be giving you a synopsis. I will not be giving you a beginning to end. My thoughts will be all over the place, but I promise you by the end of this video, you guys will have a general idea of what I'm trying to tell you and how I feel about this movie. And maybe I'll give it a score. We'll see how I feel when I get to the end of the video. But anyways, overall, like I said, I love the movie. I love the atmosphere. I love the music. I love what they were going for. The story was pretty coherent, especially for a comic book movie. Technically, it was pretty crazy. And again, the actor for the Joker, I completely forget his name. I'm not gonna butcher his name, so I'm not gonna give it an attempt to go look it up. But he played Joker beautifully. He gave you a very believable character as a human being, and a very believable Joker as an overall origin story for this character. One thing that I wanted to say though, there were a couple parts of this movie that were kind of hit or miss, but I don't think it had more to do with the story, more so, I mean, yeah, the story was a problem, but I don't know, but we'll get to it. Okay, so starting off with the movie, we start off with the Joker. I know I said I was gonna do this, but just stay with me. We start off with the Joker. He has a job as a clown. You know, he's a professional clown. He, just like me and shit. And then he makes people basically just laugh. You know, this is what he does. Right now, he's just holding up a sign and he's doing this thing. You see this in the trailers, I believe. And he's just doing his job, just being his own guy. And then, some kids just come. They just want to fuck with him. So they start badgering him. They take his sign. He chases them. I want to say that his run is hilarious. I don't know if that was done on purpose, but it was freaking funny. Every time he ran in anywhere, any context, I just died laughing. But anyway, so he chases these kids down an alley. They break the sign over his noggin, and he starts stomping them out like they're trying to put out a fire. So then after they were done, he goes to his boss, and they're like, "Oh, we heard what happened." Everybody's like, "Oh, we heard what happened. I'm sorry." His boss is like, "Fuck you. You stole the sign. None of your story, none of what you said makes sense." Obviously, it did happen because we saw it happen. People in the universe acknowledge that it happened, but his boss is like, "Fuck you. You need to pay this. You're gonna get fined for that." And then his coworker gives him a gun and goes like, "You know what? You need this, man. You need this. You know what I mean? If anybody gives you any problems, if you start flicking, you start blicking, you gotta do what you gotta do." So he takes the gun, and one thing leads to another. Fast forward to another important scene. He's performing for some kids, and then while he's jumping around doing this thing, Millie rocking in that bitch, his gun falls out of his pocket. You know what I mean? I hate it when that happens, but his gun just falls out of his pocket in front of the entire staff and the children. They're just looking at him like, "What the fuck what is going on?" So he just casually picks the gun back up, and then afterwards goes about his day. Needless to say, this proceeds to him getting fired. And then this is when we start to see like the downward spiral in his life. You know what I mean? Like a few things happened to begin that. It wasn't just him being fired. It was a culmination of many things. One of those is being set up by his coworker after the whole incident with the gun, and then his coworker pretty much throwing him under the bus. This scene was a little bit weird in that I don't know if his coworker was just lying on him and throwing him under the bus, or if we just didn't see that interaction in the way that it actually happened. Something that I noticed, and you will notice once you finish this movie, is that a lot of things in this movie happen in a way that for a fact did not happen like that within the context of that world, but the way we saw it was a little bit different because the way we see the movie for the most part is through the eyes of the Joker. which is or Arthur, as they call him in the movie. And that kind of trips you out, because once you finish a movie, such as right now, this is the first time I'm really going over it. You start to think, like, how much of this movie was actually real? Like, how much of it was real relative to the world? You know what I mean? Did he really get that gun from his worker, or did he actually really try to sell that to his worker? We'll never know, but we do know that he did feel some type of way about that. Which leads me to the next scene, which is when they hear that he gets fired, and at this point he's already started his descent down towards, being the Joker. And they come over to his house, and they're basically like, I'm sorry about what happened. This is why it trips me out, because the same worker that comes to his home that night, or that morning or afternoon, was the same guy who gave him the gun. So it's like, if he was really trying to set him up and really threw him under the bus like that, why did he go to his home to be like, I'm sorry about what happened? You know what I mean? That kind of doesn't make sense. So it's a little bit confusing, but I feel like it's done on purpose, because everything else is done so masterfully in this movie. And even this particular thing that I'm confused about is done so masterfully. It's hard to think like this was an accident. I don't think it was an accident at all, because there was definitely a stark contrast from what you saw at work and what you heard had happened, and then what you saw in the apartment. It was interesting. But yeah, his descent towards being a Joker was probably the most craziest, mind-numbingly thing ever, because you kind of just see, I hate that. You kind of, they give you a montage of different things that happened throughout the movie during his descent, and then you see that a lot of the things that he thought had happened, such as his relationship with one of his neighbors, wasn't nearly as deep and intimate as he thought it was. It was mostly just all in his head. And then he proceeds to go kill her, or at least it's implied that he kills her. I don't know what happens to the child. It was very, very interesting. I don't know if that scene was incredibly necessary, like him going to kill his neighbor. That was one scene that kind of threw me off. If they had left that out of the movie, I think that the whole narrative would have been fine. That was completely unnecessary. But yeah, that was definitely something. But yeah, fast forward to the rest of the movie when he pulls up to the talk show, and then he has that moment with the host. We all knew what was going to happen. We all knew he was coming to that. But I mean, I personally knew. I've seen reviews that have said otherwise. I know some people thought that he was going to go kill himself, but from the get-go, when he went to that show, I already had it in my mind that he was going to do something to the host. I didn't expect him to shoot him in the way that he did, because that was it was the hardest scene that I've seen in the movies in a while. I'm not even gonna hold you, know what I mean? Like, he was just pouring his heart out, just going off, and then the host is kind of blowing him off, and then it just culminates in him just pulling out a gun and shoots him. There's no hesitation, there's no camera transition, nothing. He just pulls out and blasts him. You see everything, and it made me jump a little bit. I'm not even gonna lie, it made me jump a little bit. I didn't expect it like that. It was brilliant when he did that, and he stood up and he emptied whatever he had left into that man's chest. It was just different. It symbolized him hitting rock bottom in terms of insanity. That's what it symbolized, and it was poetry to me. I loved it. But yeah, I'm not gonna make this video too much longer. If I had to give this movie, like I said, I really love this movie. This was great. If I had to give this movie a score, I'd give it a 9.5 out of 10. The only reason I'm not giving it a 10 out of 10, mind you, my 10 out of 10s are not perfect movies. You can definitely get a 10 out of 10 from me. The only thing that the only reason I wouldn't give it a 10 out of 10 was that take away that little 0.5 was because I understand what they were doing in some scenes, such as the one with the neighbor. But those scenes, I didn't really like how that went down. You know what I mean? It was kind of, I feel like they could have done a little bit more. This movie definitely could have been a little bit longer. I'm not sure how long this movie was. I might be, but again, this is just how I feel after one watch. To put it in context, Endgame, which I reviewed in my channel before, I think I took the video down. I might put it back up. I'll give that like a 9. So whatever I said in that movie, scratch that. The movie's a 9. A few months later, the movie's a 9. But yeah, that'll be all. Thank you guys for listening. Like and subscribe. Go watch my other videos. Those videos are pretty good. Yeah.
BT.